In an interview that aired on the Mexican television station Televisa, the reporter Valentina Alzaraki said to the Pope, "They say you are a doctrinal conservative." And the Pope's response was, "Yes, I am a conservative." This interview took place in May 2019, and of course the Pope was Pope Francis. If you're surprised to hear that Pope Francis was a conservative, then you need to listen to different news sources. You see, the mainstream media, the left-wing media, gave us this false narrative that Pope Francis was a liberal. Just like they gave us this false narrative that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack. They lie. Unfortunately, there were some Catholic YouTubers that repeated their lies and made a lot of Catholics very angry with the Pope. A lot of Catholics emailed me, they left the church because they thought the Pope was this liberal. But in that interview, she brought up the fact that he's so nice to gay people. Is there any possibility of allowing gay marriage? And he said, no, marriage is between one man and one woman. It's a sacrament. Jesus gave us a sacrament. The church cannot change sacraments. And he said that repeatedly. You know, I've heard him say that in 2012, 2013. He said that when he was Archbishop in Argentina. But the media and guys on YouTube that disliked him for reasons that I'll give you my opinion why here in a second, twisted and flipped the script and made him out to be this liberal. And I'm only bringing up Pope Francis is because they will not let this guy die and rest in peace. They are on constantly still criticizing and lying about him. Like, I think it was Sunday, Pope Leo gives a great homily, and sure enough, like, these people are I'm trying to think of a nice word. These Catholic YouTubers who don't like Pope Francis, they're as predictable as the left-wing media. You see something you know left-wing media is going to lie about, and in every station they'll repeat the same lies. Like the Democrats give them talking points, and they literally do. The Democrat National Committee gives the media talking points, and the left-wing media just repeats it. NBC, ABC, CNN, you'll hear the same lies about Republicans. In the same way, I know when I hear one of these usual suspects on YouTube say this, there's going to be 10 videos that same day saying the same thing. So the latest smear for Pope Francis is Pope Leo contradicts Pope Francis. There was like 3 videos with that exact title. Then there's other ones. Did Pope Leo contradict Pope Francis? Did Pope Leo correct Pope Francis? And so, you know, when I was a Protestant, I realized legalistic Protestants would wrench the Bible out of context to make it mean what they want it to mean and to have their narrative. And then I noticed there's some legalistic Catholics, but they don't know the Bible. So they take Pope's words and twist them out of context. And I'm going to do a whole video about this. It's going to be a long video, so I'm not going to get into everything now. But just give me I'll give you a quick example. So Pope Leo on Sunday in his homily said, marriage is not an ideal. And like, oh, Pope Francis said marriage was an ideal. Again, context, context, context. So this is what the Pope said. Marriage, this is a quote, marriage according to Christian revelation is not a ceremony or a social event. It is neither a formality nor an abstract ideal, but rather a permanent bond of love. Pope Francis stated in a speech on January 27, 2023. That's Pope Francis. So he said the same exact thing Pope Leo is saying, but in other documents and other homilies, he used it in a different context and said, the ideal of marriage, blah, 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 blah. Oh, he called marriage an ideal. You see how they take them out of context? And they did the same thing with Pope Benedict. They want to make you think that Pope Benedict and Pope Francis hated each other. Whenever they spoke publicly, they spoke very affectionate about each other. They loved each other like a father and son. And Pope Francis said he would go to Pope Benedict as a son to a father. And Pope Benedict had the same affectionate words. But they wanted to show division amongst them too. They wanted us to hate Pope Francis. I'm telling you, I'm going to show you in the scriptures and give you my personal opinion why. And now they're doing the same thing with Pope Leo. They want us to think Pope Leo was a better pope, but he's disagreeing with Pope Francis. He's going to change everything Pope Francis did. And if you hear the words of Pope Leo and take the man at his word, like we should, he met with Pope Francis every Saturday, and he said he looked forward to those times. He was his spiritual father. He learned so much. He loved Pope Francis. And he said, my pontificate is going to continue the synodal way of Pope Francis. I'm going to continue and build upon what Pope Francis taught us all. There's going to be no separation. Again, he could have very easily picked the name Pope Francis II, and it wouldn't have surprised me, because he loved Pope Francis. And there's no light in between these two, just like there was no light in between Pope Benedict. But the devil wants to cause division in the church. And this is where we're going to dive into the scripture, and I'm going to give you some insight, I believe. John chapter 20, John 17, 20 and 21. This is Jesus. This is his last prayer before he goes to his passion. I do not pray for these only, but also for those who believe in me through their word, us, that they may all be one, us, even as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. This is why I'm Catholic. Jesus started one church, and to keep us in unity, we follow the Pope. The Pope keeps us together. You break away from the Pope, you're Protestant, Orthodox, Sedevacantist, whatever you are, you're not in unity. You're not part of God's church. The devil knows that was Jesus' last prayer, and he hates Jesus and he hates us. So his diabolical plan is to get us to hate the Pope. I was in the military, I'm telling you. You want to win a battle, you go after the leader. You kill the leader. They always shoot for the generals, you know. They always shoot for the leader on the battlefield. So the devil will always attack the Pope. And Pope Pius X said, anyone who dissents from the Pope cannot be holy. Because he knew. And if you don't believe this is diabolical, listen to this. And diabolical, I mean a plan of Satan. This is demonic. Attacking the Pope, if you're Catholic, is demonic. 1 Samuel 15, 22 and 23. And Samuel said, as the Lord has great delight in burnt offerings, sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord, behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen at the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. So that's like the Pharisees. They have these fancy sacrifices to the Lord, and the Lord appreciates that. The Lord loves the sacrifice. But if you don't obey, you're a whitewashed tomb, according to Jesus. You know, on the outside, you look all fancy. But the main thing Jesus is saying, God is saying, to obey is better than sacrifice. And to be rebellious is divination. Some translation uses the word witchcraft. It's demonic. Now, the devil deceives by making them feel holier than the Pope, and they know better than the Pope, and they have to correct the Pope because they have a lot of followers on YouTube, so they really believe they know better than the Pope. They know better than the church, the magisterium, all the cardinals that pick the Pope. They know better. And like I said, they will take his words out of context all day long to prove to you that they're smarter than the Pope. They're holier than the Pope. So he uses pride in some people. And eventually, it leads to sedevacantists. But there's not a lot of money in being a sedevacanist. I'm just telling you, I shoot it straight. And 1 Timothy 6:10 tells us this. For the love of money is the root of all evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced their hearts with many pangs. One of the, because I'm Catholic, so I always get Catholic things pop up on my YouTube, and out of curiosity, sometimes I'll watch them or I'll listen while I'm driving. I'll hit them while I'm driving. And one guy pops up, and again, there was like 3 with this title. Pope Leo contradicts Pope Francis was the title. So I listen, okay, what's he gonna say? And first, he thanked all his followers because in the month of May, 1 month, he hauled in $90,000 in donations. That's a nice haul for 1 month. I don't know about you, but I've never made $90,000 in a year, never mind 1 month. And he said he was kind of disappointed because their goal was 100 grand, but he thinks he'll get closer to that because there were some technical difficulties starting out in the fundraising. I got married in 1985, so I'll be married 40 years this year. And most of my life, my married life, I worked at least 70 hours a week. And I've never made $90,000 in a year. This guy's making $90,000 in a month. So you could see, I'm not saying that's why he's doing it, but it could be. Because if you listen to what he said about Pope Francis, if he didn't say he was Catholic, I would have swore he was the most anti-Catholic Protestant. This is the kind of stuff I used to say when I was a immature Protestant who hated the Catholic Church. And what he was doing was this. One who publicly either stirs up hostilities or hatred among subjects. I'm sorry. This is the Code of Canon Law 1373. He violated this law, like everything he said about the Pope. It was amazing. I was like, whoa. He criticized what the Pope taught, how he taught, his intellect, how he explained things, how he taught. He just like ripped this guy apart like he was some scumbag on the street. He was talking about a Pope who passed away like just recently. Like, it just blew my mind. So one who publicly either stirs up hostilities or hatred among subjects against the apostolic see or against an ordinary on account of some act of ecclesiastical power or ministry, or incites subjects to disobey them, is to be punished by an interdict or by other just penalties. He violated Canon 1373 like it was just amazing. And then Canon 1404. Canon 1404. The first see, this is the Pope, is judged by no one. And according to tradition, that means no one who's alive. The next Pope, like Pope Leo, could judge Pope Francis. And the way he judged him seems like he's going to canonize him. He constantly says, I feel his presence from heaven. So that's the only person that's allowed. If you're Catholic, if you want to play games and make believe you're Catholic and act like a Protestant, of course you're not going to believe anything the Code of Canon Law says, But, $90,000 in a month is a pretty good haul. But that's nothing compared to Father James Altman. When he was disciplined, and he was basically fired from his position, he was told by his bishop not to present himself as a priest, not to wear the clerical thing. And he violated 1 Samuel, and he rebelled, wore his clerical thing, basically cursed out his bishop and the Pope, and did a GoFundMe. And he raised $900,000 in a month, 10 times of what Eric Sammons did. That was small potatoes, 90 grand. He got $900,000 in a month. And reports are it eventually went over $1 million, made $1 million bucks. But the first month, his haul was $900,000, paid cash for a 200 grand house, back when you could buy a good house for $200,000. This was a few years ago. And his rebellion, you can see his diabolical rebellion got even worse. He called the Pope an Antichrist. Then he became a sedevacantist and said, there is no Pope. Then he said, we should kill the Pope. And someone even said, were you being, sarcastic, or were you using hyperbole, saying we should put a millstone around his neck and throw him in the river? He goes, no, I was being serious. all the souls that this diabolical viper, this is what he's calling our Pope, and all other names worse than that, he's leading souls to hell. So it'd be better that we kill him and send him to hell. He can't die soon enough and go to hell for me. This is what this crazy priest is saying, and people are sending him money. People are sending him money. Because you see, if you've never had an encounter with Jesus, but intellectually you know Catholicism is true, you try to be a Catholic by following men and following rules and act holy on the outside like the Pharisees. But you're missing the main thing. Obey is better than sacrifice. And as a Catholic, what makes us different than Protestants is we believe that we have to assent, we have to obey the Pope and his magisterium. And these people, for whatever the motivation is, they are not. So some people say, why do you keep talking about Pope Francis? Because the devil wants you to hate Pope Francis, because when Pope Leo XIV, in my humble opinion, I have no insight, I don't know anybody in Rome, I believe he's going to eventually canonize Pope Francis. And the devil's going to use that to turn a lot of people away from Pope Leo because they hate Pope Francis. You see how the devil works? Don't be deceived. If you hear someone bashing the Pope, be like St. Padre Pio. Be like a saint. Don't be like a YouTuber. Be like a saint. St. Padre Pio. There was a man, and I know I got some Catholic brothers here that know the quote, and they could put it up for me, please, in the comments. I'm thinking of one in particular who loves my Latin lace curtains back there that my wife hung up, and I keep forgetting to take down. But there's a story, true story. This man, this Italian guy, tells a story that he was having doubts about the Pope at the time. I forget what Pope it was, but the Pope had met with the leader of Russia, and communism is evil. So it got this man mad. And when he went into St. Padre Pio to confess that he was mad at the Pope, St. Padre Pio covered his ears and said, get out of here. Don't you dare badmouth the Pope in my presence. You go and repent. He was furious. And they said, yes, he would not tolerate anyone saying, and this was nothing compared to what Eric Salmon says or what James Altman said, or I can list 10 other YouTubers that just constantly, their whole channel is bashing Pope Francis and criticizing the church, That's what St. Padre Pio did. And unlike James Altman, when James Altman was told not to present himself as a priest, he basically said, F you, and he goes and preaches, and disobedient parishes allow him to preach still, and he collects money. He's like, poor me, I need money. So he gets 900 grand instead of getting a real job and working for a living like most of us do. Forget about that. It's, want to get his hands dirty. But no, when that happened to St. Padre Pio, the people were mad because they knew this was a holy priest. They knew this priest was a holy man of God. So they came up protesting, and he got mad at them. He's like, quiet, don't you dare criticize my bishop. Don't you dare criticize the Pope. Now you go home and repent. And his bishop said when he was handed the letter from Rome that he couldn't celebrate Mass publicly, his response was that of a saint. The will of my superiors is the will of God. So if you want to see a difference between a saint and a rebellious sinner, right there. Richard Warrenbrand, he was I think a Lutheran, but he was thrown into a Nazi concentration camp and tortured for preaching the gospel. Then when the communists came, I think it was in some European country, I forget. I've read the book decades ago. But he said when the communists came, they were even more ruthless than the Nazis. The communists were worse than the Nazis, and they beat this guy senseless because he kept preaching the gospel. And communism is anti-God. This is why communism and socialism and liberalism is so wicked and diabolical. But they literally threw him in a pit for a year, a dark pit, literally 50 feet down. And it's a crazy story if you ever want to listen. But he said one time when he was free, for a short amount of time he was free, he met a theologian from America, and he started explaining systematic theology to him. And Richard Warrenbrand said, dude, this is so much to think about. how do you carry your cross and figure this out? I couldn't even carry a pencil and pay attention to you. And as a Catholic, I'm like, we are called to evangelize. We are called to love as Christ loved. The harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. Who got time to look at everything, examine everything every pope said, and oh, look what this guy said, well, he contradicted this. Who got time for that? I mean, if you're a Catholic, the whole reason of being Catholic is because, you know, Jesus started the church. Matthew 16, 18, and 19, he said, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail. The devil will not prevail. He's protected every pope from teaching error and heresy. Pope Francis changed nothing. His style was different. In that interview, they said, you know, they went on, they said, yeah, you were very conservative as an Archbishop of Argentina. You opposed gay marriage, you opposed same-sex unions, but now it seems like you're, you know, looking out for the gays. And he's like, well, you know, doctrine can't change. I'm a doctrinal conservative. He said, but there's countries where they're killing people for being gay. We need some kind of protections for these people. And of course, the people that wanted to take Pope Francis out of context took that out of context. So just rest. Love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself, and evangelize. You know, worry about yourself. Don't worry about the Pope. I mean, this is so foolish. These people up here, they sound like fools as they act so wise and bloviate and pontificate. They sound so wise, saying the council of this said this, and this Pope said that, and Pope Francis said this. He is wrong. Like, they sit in the judgment seat of the Pope. It blows my mind that people even take these guys serious. It's like a Saturday Night Live skit to me, you know? That's not our job, you know? It would be like me, you know, I got out of the Navy, I was a petty officer. It would be like me making a YouTube video criticizing the Admiral of the Navy, who knows way more than me about naval operations, who's been in the Navy more years than me, and has way more responsibility than me, and I'm going to sit in judgment as a petty officer saying everything the Admiral of the Navy is doing wrong, and we can't win this war unless he does this, this, and this. People would laugh at me. So I don't know why these YouTubers are taken serious when they judge the Pope. So I had to get that off my chest. I actually woke up at 2 in the morning, you know. Again, I don't have no way of getting you guys to send me 90 grand, so I get up early and make these videos before I go to work. So God bless and stay Catholic.